Alright guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today. For this one, we are going to do another out and about video. So I'm still in Berlin, the German capital. I'm in the Südstern area, South Star, if you want to translate it into English. And this is kind of in the sort of central southern part of the city, I guess we could say. But yeah, we're going to check out this place behind me at Brauhaus Südstern. I'm actually going to go and see Blind Guardian in a couple of hours, which is just at Huxley's Neuwelt along that way. So looking forward to that. But I thought this was a nice opportunity to come down and check out this brew pub, and I really enjoy visiting German Brauhauses and trying beer that you're not going to get to try anywhere else. So we'll do as we always do with this one. We'll go in, we'll have a walk around, I'll let you see the menu, we'll try some of the beers, we'll have a look at some of the food, and I hope that you guys enjoy this one. But yeah, Brauhaus Südstern, let's get started. So yeah guys, this is it, the outside of it. We're actually in quite a nice area. The place that I'm going to see Blind Guardian is just literally up this way, and I'm going to try and not get killed by some of the kamikaze cyclists we have here. But you can see you've got this lovely church. This is one of these kind of typical, very open German streets. You know, if I was going to come and live in Germany, this is the kind of street I would like to have my apartment on. But anyway, I'm a flat on, I'm using American English, that's terrible. But yeah, you can see they've got this nice outdoor part in the front. And yeah, as is typical in Germany, which I never understand, you've got all this graffiti over it. But there you can see Brauhaus Südstern. And yeah, you've got the little sign here. So, of course, you can get a currywurst and pommes. Classic Berlin dish. But yeah, when you come in, this place is very, very nice. There you've got your Brauhaus Südstern sign without the graffiti. But yeah, they're telling you a little bit about the beers here, which you'll see a bit later on in the video. But yeah, this place is really quite nice. The thing is, with most of these brew pubs in Berlin, they are fairly new. You know, most of them started in the early 90s. You can see there are some of the fermentation tanks through there. You can see they've got their brew kettles over here, which are pretty cool. They're mash tun. This will be I think this one in the middle will be the mash tun. Quite an interesting little setup actually. But there you can see they've got the bar. If we take a walk along here, you can literally go through the whole pub. They've got their Weizen and their Fest beer on just now. But yeah, the whole pub is really quite nice actually. There's some football on, some Bundesliga. I always enjoy the Bundesliga. I quite like Borussia Dortmund. But yeah, you can see through to this part. We have the kitchen, they're working through there. And then you come out and they've got a little beer garden out the back, which is very, very nice. So yeah, again, you've got some more graffiti, typical of Berlin. But yeah, this is where I've been sitting. This is Isha, who is from India. She was in my hostel, so we had a little walk around Berlin and we're trying some beers. So this is the second beer tasting you're going to see. Filmed this video in a bit of an unusual way. Do you like the Hefeweizen?
It's pretty good.
It is good, yeah. So you'll see that review a little bit later. But let's get started. You're going to see the Helles now. Alright guys, well, time for our first tasting then here at Brauhaus Südstern. So yeah, where better to start than with one of my favourite German styles of beer. So this particular beer is called the Helle Stern, basically the light star, I guess we could say if we translate it into English. And this one is a classic Helles lager beer. So when it poured, it had about a solid finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream coloured head. It's not absolutely perfect white, and you can see it's got this lovely kind of rich kind of golden yellow colour to it. So remember, the colour of your beer depends mainly on the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar caramelizes, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel age you do or any adjuncts that you put into the beer will play a role in that as well. But when it comes to Helles lagers and lagers, for the most part, we don't often have to care about those last two variables. But yeah, this one has a lovely, very rich golden yellow colour. This is typical for a Helles lager beer. Remember, the definition of a lager is bottom fermented beer, if you like. So bottom fermenting yeast, cold temperature fermentation, usually about 8 to 12 degrees Celsius actually. So yeah, basically a Helles lager is, yeah, a blonde lager. We have The Czech Svetli is probably an equivalent to this one as well, to the German Helles. But yeah, this one, in terms of its appearance, when you consider what style it is, there's nothing really surprising about it. You would expect this beer to be a lovely kind of bright golden yellow colour, as this one is. But you can see there's a steady stream of big bubbles going up toward the bottom of the head there. It looks very, very nice, and yeah, I have to say I quite like the artwork on the glass here. This is pretty cool. So yeah, you can see a good little bit of natural haze to this one, which we would want as well. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance of it, so let's have a wee look at the aroma and see what we get. Oh yeah, it just smells very, very nice. Yeah, it gives you everything you want. One of the more bready Helles beers that I've come across recently. It's got a nice soft green component, leans toward the grassy side of things. And yeah, you've just got a nice little bit of soft fruity character as well. But yeah, let's break it down a wee bit more. So, backbone of the beer, when you sugar it up a little bit, you start to get a little bit more of that kind of bread crusty, like fresh white bread crusty sort of note out of the beer. Absolutely getting some of that. Yeah, lovely soft white bready characteristics in there. You can smell there's a little bit of crisp white bread, but you've also got a really kind of fluffy sort of white bready character coming out of this one too, which is very, very nice. One or two little Jacob's cream cracker sort of notes. And yeah, there's a little touch of a kind of biscuity sweetness to this, like McVitie's digestive biscuits. I think that goes together really very nicely. Yeah. On the malty side of things, it gives you everything you would want. At the back of the nose, you do get a little bit more of a kind of yeasty note out of this one. You can smell a little bit of a slightly sort of more woody, crackery type bread to the beer. But, as I say, it comes across very, very nicely in its malty and yeasty characteristics. There's nothing unsurprising about this beer. Or there's nothing surprising about the beer, I should say. I can't speak. Yeah, there's nothing surprising about this one when you consider what style it is. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, you get a nice little bit of earthiness to it, but you get the typical brightness that you get from German hops. So yeah, smooth earthiness, a little bit of a herbal quality. You do get a little bit of floral note out of it, and also some nice kind of lighter grassy characters too. The grassiness has a wee bit of zestiness to it, but overall, the green component of the hops here is actually quite smooth in this one, which is kind of interesting. Fruity side of the beer is as you would expect as well. Yeah, it's got a little bit of that kind of sultana type note to it, you know, dried white green grape. There's a little teeny bit of apricot in there. And yeah, some, you know, sort of slightly oily peary notes. Maybe, yeah, more of an oily pear sultana type note you're getting from this one for me. But aroma-wise, it comes across very, very nicely. So yeah, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, this beer is 5% ABV, and it actually tells you on the card what hops are in this one. So it contains Hallertau, Hercules and Pearl. So these are slightly stronger alpha acid hops. Remember, alpha acid within the hop is what gives you your bitterness. It determines how bitter the beer is. Beta acids are the ones that determine how long the bitterness lasts. But yeah, the ones in this, the Pearl and the Hercules. Pearl is about 5.5% alpha acid if I remember correctly, and Hercules is maybe about 8. If I remember, maybe 7 actually. I think it's maybe more 7 than 8. It's not quite as strong as 8. But yeah, the hoppiness in this one, I'm surprised the green component isn't a little bit more spicy than it is when it's these two hops that are in there. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It smells very, very nice. I think it's about time that we have a taste of this. So yeah, this one is the Helles Stern, a 5% Helles lager beer. Our first one here at Brauhaus Südstern in Berlin. Slange, Skål, cheers, Prost. That's nice, actually. First impression of it is that it's a bit more grainy than some of the other Helles beers that I've come across when I've been in Berlin. Actually, this one does have a little bit more of just a kind of grainy, bread crusty backbone to it. But yeah, it's still got the drinkability and everything you would expect of the style, but definitely a little bit more kind of grainy in the beginning. It sweetens up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste with it too. But yeah, I think this is pretty solid. So thumbs up to Brauhaus Südstern for this one. Let's break the flavour down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So, yeah. Backbone of the beer then, middle third of the palate, you can feel that sort of fresh, hedgehog bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you do get a little layer of a sort of wholemeal brown bready sort of thing. As I said, this beer is a little bit more kind of grainy, I guess brown bready than quite a few Helles that I've had in recent times. But yeah, on top of the brown bread layer, the brown bread and the bread crust linger into the aftertaste. Toward the front of that middle third of the palate, you maybe get a little touch of a woody flavour. But then yeah, on top of the brown bready layer, there is a little bit of white bread in there, and in the middle of your palate, you've just got a little circle there where you get the sweetness out of the beer. In the dead centre of your palate, that's where you're going to get the alcohol flavours. So there's a little bit of a sweet kind of, there is a little touch of like a sweet caramelly honey note to it, but as you move further out from that, you've got a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of flavour to the beer. So again, that is quite nice. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate. On the back third of the palate, you can feel again the grainy, bread crusty backbone is a little bit stronger. Remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, darker flavours, you know, more bitter and dry flavours come out further back. So yeah, the bread crusty thing is a bit stronger. That's definitely a stronger flavour. You can feel the white bready part of the beer is a little bit taller as well, and on top of that, you've got some of the kind of yeasty notes coming out of the beer. I should also point out the brown bready part of the beer also feels taller in the back of the palate too. But yeah, I think that is quite nice. But yeah, the yeasty characteristics to this one are a bit more kind of crackery and almost very slightly woody. But yeah, back third of the palate, the flavour's taller, then as you come forward it just condenses down a wee bit, which I do quite like. Yeah, this is pretty nice in that sense. So, yeah, let's move to the hoppy side of the beer. Back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of that smooth earthiness that is typical of German hops, be it Hallertauer or Tettnang. But yeah, you get a little bit of that. As you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal as well. But yeah, as you come further forward, you can feel you get a little bit more of a kind of floral note to the beer. It's not overly spicy, it is actually quite smooth, and round the front curve of the tongue it's a little bit lighter and grassy, and the grassiness to this beer is a little bit zesty, but it's also a little bit wet. So I do quite like that in this one. The green component of this beer is quite nice. You can feel it builds a little bit of zestiness the further you go into the aftertaste. But let's focus on the front third of the palate and the kind of fruity side of the beer. So, base of the front third of the palate, you've got a little bit of white bread forming there, but then you get that nice oily bubble on top of that where the fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, on top of that, at the back of that front third of the palate, you do get the kind of more sultana, you know, dry white green grapey sort of thing coming out of this one. Sultana is definitely the flavour that comes to mind there. As you move further forward, there's maybe a very light apricot-y note, but then as you progress further forward on that front third of your palate, you get this more oily, peary sort of thing. Maybe just at the very front tip of your tongue there's a sort of fresh green apple. Yeah, a little bit of fresh green apple with this one for sure. But yeah, fruity side of this beer is quite nice, and like I say, you get these bready, grainy notes coming out further into the aftertaste as well. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this one. Just to round off with the mouthfeel then. For me, top end of light-bodied. The carbonation does have a good degree of crispness in this one. You could see how big the bubbles were in the beer when we looked at that earlier. And you also have just this really nice kind of smoothness to this beer as well. It's kind of clean but quite smooth at the same time. IBUs I think are about 20. It's not overly bitter, this beer. The malt base, like we said, has got a good bit of graininess and dryness to it, but a bit of smoothness and a touch of sweetness. And then you've got all the nice you do have all the nice kind of fruitiness with this beer as well. But yeah, solid Helles beer this one, but compared to others that I've had recently, this one is a little bit more grainy and brown bready, which makes it quite interesting. I wonder if that's just to do with one of the types of malts, or potentially just the yeast that they're using. I don't know. But yeah, a nice Helles anyway, and you can't ask for much more than that. If you try these beers, you want them to be nice and drinkable and to be true to the style, and this one certainly is. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. That's beer tasting number 1, the Südstern, a Helles lager at 5% ABV. Catch you guys in a second with something else. So yeah guys, one of the really cool things about visiting all the German Brauhauses is that quite often they have their own coasters. So here you can see the one for Brauhaus Südstern. So yeah, You can see this is the kind of common thing on the back. It tells you that you use the U7 to get here, get off at Südstern. But they also have this one just now, which has the orangutan on it. I love the great apes, awesome animals. But yeah, that's quite cool to see that when you're enjoying a nice Helles beer. There you are. Alright guys, well, time for beer tasting number 2 then here at Brauhaus Südstern. So yeah, we're going to return to a style that I have begun enjoying again in recent times. You know, I used to love this style of beer before I came to Germany back in 2014, but then I discovered Helles, and this one kind of fell aside a little bit. I started to find this beer style very, very heavy. But yeah, the one we're going to have a little look at now is called Stern Weiser. So it comes in at 5.2% ABV, and this one, of course, is a Hefeweizen. So yeah, you can see it's got an epic head on it. I was very, very impressed when the guy brought this to me. Lovely, big and foamy. Yeah, and I would say that is a perfect white head. So, colour-wise, you can see that this beer has that lovely kind of rich golden yellow that you would expect of the style. Again, remember that's down to the type of malts that you use, and you can see actually this one's got a lot of carbonation in it. I'm not sure how well the camera's going to focus on that. Bring it closer. There you go. Look at how much carbonation this Hefeweizen has. But yeah, remember the thing with a Hefeweizen is, for the most part, generally speaking, the malt base that they use in these tends to be 40% wheat and 60% barley, and then of course you've got special Hefeweizen yeasts. The name Hefeweizen, Hefe is yeast, Weizen, wheat. So yeah, basically a yeasty wheat beer, if you like. But yeah, colour-wise, this one's got a lovely rich kind of golden yellow to it. Lots of carbonation, good little bit of natural haze, which is exactly what you want from this style. Again, you can see the Brauhaus Südstern art on this, but I just got a 0.3 for this one. The one that we had before was a 0.4, because there are another 2 beers that we're going to try after this one. But yeah, looks the part anyway. Let's have a wee look at the aroma, if we can actually get it, because the head is pretty epic, as you can see. But yeah, that doesn't stop the aroma coming out, you can say that quite safely. Yeah, so aroma-wise with this one, it kind of, again, it gives you everything you would want, and that's what you expect with these beers that you'll get at German Brauhouses. They're not going to do anything surprising, but you want them to be well done, and most of the time they are. But yeah, with this beer, you can really smell the... this one, for me, it's actually quite a banana and clovey leaning Hefeweizen in this. So the backbone of the beer, there's a teeny little bit of bread crust in there, but I'd say that takes a back seat to everything else. You've got a lovely sort of, you've got a lovely big, soft, white bready character to this one. At the back of the nose, you definitely get a little bit of the, you can smell a little bit of kind of smoothness and slight spiciness from the wheat, but you've also got the clovey notes in there. Yeah, you've also got the kind of nice clovey character to this one just sitting in it. And yeah, you get a little bit of that sweeter, almost bubblegum note to this one. There's a bit of a kind of banana and bubblegum character too. But overall, I would say, compared to other Hefeweizens that I've tried recently, it does lean a little bit more towards that nice clovey settings. But lovely soft white bread, you can feel the wheat thickening it out, bit of banana in there, a bit of kind of clovey spices, as we said, and a little bit of a kind of candied bubblegum, something like that. But yeah. On the hoppy side of things, and remember, the Hefeweizen is not one of the more hopped styles of beer. This one, you get a little bit of, you get a tiny little bit of smooth earthiness to it, a little bit of herbal character. Maybe if you sniff it in quite deeply, you do get a little bit of a kind of slight bright floral character to it, but you've also got some nice zesty grassy notes coming out of it too. On the fruity side of things, yeah, you've got a lot of apricot to this one. There's a little bit of that kind of peary note once again. It's actually, the fruity aromas in this are actually quite similar to what we had from the Helles, except that you have this big kind of banana, bubblegummy candy sort of thing that you would associate with the Hefeweizen. So yeah, sultana, pear, a little bit of apricot, maybe a wee touch of pineapple as well, actually, I would say that. And then yeah, there's a little bit of that kind of grassy, lemony type note out of it too. But in terms of what you'd expect from a Hefeweizen aroma, this one gives you everything. I'm just going to have a little look. Does it say what type of hop they've used in this one? No, it doesn't say what hops and things. It just says it's based on the Bavarian, the Bayerische Weissbier. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the aroma and the appearance of this one. Let's have a taste of it. So yeah, this one is the Stern Weiser, the Star Weissbier, I guess we could say, at 5.2% ABV. Slange, Skål, cheers, Prost. So make sure we don't get the head all over ourselves. That's nice, actually. Compared to other Weizens that I've had recently, I actually find this one, this is quite light and very, very clean. And again, it is all about, the thing with the Hefeweizen is, it's all about how the aftertaste develops. For me, that's what makes a good Hefeweizen. If you get a nice kind of smooth, creamy flavour out of this beer in the aftertaste, that's what really does it. As I said, back in the day, I used to find, after I discovered Helles, I found these beers very thick, and I could only drink, you know, one of them. I started treating this beer as a tasting beer rather than a session beer when I discovered Helles. But since the New England IPAs have come out, that has changed. These beers to me are quite light and drinkable now. So yeah, this is nice actually. This is a really solid Hefeweizen, and again, you can't ask for much more. Yeah, good stuff, very good stuff. Lovely, clean, smooth, sweet beer, this one. You get a little bit more hoppy character out of this as well. But let's break the flavour down and describe it properly for you. So, backbone of the beer, absolutely, you get a little bit of a kind of fresh, white loaf bread crust to that. That's the backbone of it. On top of that, you can feel the nice, quite dense wheat characters in there. You've got that nice, dense, thicker, wheaty note. But then on top of that, some white, some soft, fluffy white bread. And the dead set, and you know, it's quite a straightforward beer, this one. Somebody's not happy to be at the brewery behind me. It's a shame that you would think the German kids would love being at the brewery. It's preparation for getting older, you know. But yeah. Yeah, you've got this lovely fluffy white bready note there. In the middle of the palate, you start to get a little bit of sweetness, and it's kind of interesting because it is almost a little bit. It has a little bit of an almost kind of honey note as you go. In the dead centre of the palate, you can feel the kind of concentrated alcohol type note in there. So it has got a wee bit of that big caramelly character, but as you move further out from that, it actually does. It actually does give you a little bit more of a kind of honeyish or biscuity note. So yeah, it's interesting, this one. It's a very straight shooting beer, this one. It's not the most complex, but it's just nicely done. And as I say, you can't ask for much more than that from the style. On the back third of the palate then, you get a bit more bread crust there. You can feel that the kind of white bready, the wheaty notes are definitely taller. You get a little bit of more spicy character out of the wheat there as well. So you can feel the kind of clovey notes coming out of it on the back third of the palate a little bit more, and on top of that you've got the more yeasty character to the beer. You get a little bit more of that kind of fluffy white bread, but it's got a little bit of a kind of crackery element to it as well. The more that the flavour develops in this one as well, toward the front of that middle third of the palate, you get a sort of, you do get the banana mixing in with the bready notes, but you also get a little bit of that kind of candied bubblegum thing, and that comes out a little bit behind the banana, I would say. So again, that's toward the front of the middle third of your palate. The most complex part of the Hefeweizen, of course, is the way the malt and the yeast kind of interact. But yeah, that's nice. Back third of the palate, again, the flavour is taller, and then as you come into the middle third of the palate, it just condenses down a little bit. So yeah, gets a thumbs up from me there. Yeah, so I think we can go on to the hoppy side of things. So, hoppy side of the beer. A little bit of smooth earthiness there on the back corners of the palate, and a little bit of herbal character as you come further forward. The herbal notes kind of spread forward. A little bit of floral character on the front corners of the tongue, and you do get a little touch of spiciness out of the beer the further into the aftertaste you go, and that is very nice. And then yeah, around the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter, and and more grassy. And the grassiness is actually quite wet in this one. And you do get a little touch of zestiness out of the beer the further that you go into the aftertaste too. But front third of the palate then. So the base of that front third of your palate is a nice kind of soft white bready character for sure. On top of that, you do get the fruity notes there, so you can feel at the back of that front third of the palate some of the banana and bubblegummy flavours are just coming in, but then you start to get a little bit of the kind of sultana, white green grapey note that we talked about earlier. As you come further forward, you get a bit of the apricot. There's a bit more of an oily pineapple to this one too, but then as you move to the front half of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of an oily pear, and then almost a little bit of a slightly limey character just as you reach the front tip of the tongue, and that mixes in with the kind of grassy esters in the beer too. So yeah, flavour wise, this is very, very nice. This is a beer, it's definitely kind of grown on me and thicken out the more that I've drank of it, but I think this is nice. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. I think I like the Weizen. I have to admit, I do like the Weizen a little bit more than the Helles. So yeah, that's that. But yeah, I think we can round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel of this one too. So yeah. So yeah, for me, it's a mid-bodied beer, this one, maybe bottom end of mid-bodied. Carbonation does give you a little bit of crispness to it. Actually, again, feels like quite a light and quite clean beer in some ways. And yeah, it's not the thickest of Hefeweizens I've come across. It has got a little bit more crispness to it. In terms of IBUs, I would say it's standard 15 IBUs. Remember, this is not the most hopped style of beer, I think we can say. The malty base is lovely and smooth. It does develop a little bit of sweetness the further you go into the beer, and the fruits are leaning toward the drier and smoother side of things as well. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the Stern Weiser. So I enjoyed this one. That's probably my favourite of the two beers we've had so far in the video. So we'll leave it at that for this one. There are two more to try. I'll catch you guys in a little second. Cheers. Alright guys, so time for a little look at the menu here at Brauhaus Südstern. So yeah, we've got the English on the right, the German on the left. So we'll go for the English because of course more people are going to understand that. So yeah, for dessert we have red berry compote, warm apple pie and just regular ice cream. So yeah, might need to have some ice cream a little bit later. But then of course we have the Hausgebraut beer. So yeah, of course, the four beers they have on tap just now, they have the Helle Stern, which you've already seen me review. The wind's going to blow this menu away, so I'll need to hold it down. They have the Dunkle Stern, the dark one, a nice Dunkel lager. The Fest beer, which you will see very, very shortly. You are going to see all four of these beers reviewed, of course. They have the Stern Weiser. Yeah, so Helles, a Dunkel, kind of Oktoberfest Märzen sort of thing, and then Hefeweizen, which is quite nice. And price-wise, these are actually pretty good. I mean, €4 for a 0.4 litre. That's quite nice. So €4 is roughly, you know, like £3.50 sterling, something like that, maybe in the region of $4.50 American for those of you watching in different parts of the world. So yeah, the Weizen, of course, is a little bit more expensive. I'm not sure exactly why though. Maybe just higher malt content or whatever. But yeah, you can also get some non-alcoholic beers. You can get an Aperol Spritz if you really want. But yeah, that's that. But yeah, the food menu is quite interesting as well. So yeah, you can just get regular French fries, chanterelle soup, hearty goulash soup, chili con carne, sounds quite interesting, with a bit of baguette, a small salad, a tart flambé, is Alsatian style, sounds quite interesting. You can also get one, a Greek style one, pasta squares, homemade spätzle. I'm not sure exactly what it is, I'll need to ask about that. You can get a Wiener Schnitzel. Might have to have one of those. I've not had a schnitzel yet when I've been in Germany this time. You have some pan-fried mushrooms, roast pork, hearty beer goulash, fettuccine, roast lamb knuckle and entrecôte, and the prices are pretty reasonable actually. This is one of the cheaper Brauhauses that I've seen in Berlin on this trip. This is definitely cheaper than Pfefferbräu, and the name of the other one's gone right out of my head now, but they're pretty decent price-wise. Of course, they've got a few different types of drinks here as well. You can have a quick look at this. They've got beer und Saft, you know, beer and juice, you can see that. some alcohol-free beers, different kinds of things, you know, Apfelsaft, Orangensaft, Rhabarbersaft, yeah, just different types of concentrated fruit juices basically. Soft drinks there. You can see some red and white wines. They've got a Chianti. That always the Chianti always reminds me of Hannibal Lecter whenever I see that, a nice Chianti. But yeah, that's another film reference there. But yeah, you can get some whiskies, vodkas, brandies, rums, yeah, all of these kind of things. Some tea, some coffee, and long drinks. But yeah, fairly extensive selection of that there. But of course, if you come to a brewery, you really want to have the beers. But that's a little quick look at the menu for you here at Brauhaus Südstern. Alright guys, well, time for beer tasting number 3 then here at Südstern. So, yeah, I thought we would move inside for this one. The baby out the back was crying a lot. I really felt sorry for the mum because he just wouldn't calm down. I thought it wasn't so nice for you guys in the video either. But yeah, we're sat inside now and it's a wee bit warmer. But yeah, beer number 3 is going to be the Fest beer. So, this one comes in at 5.6% ABV, and it says on the menu that it is just an amber lager, actually. So I'm guessing it is supposed to be a Märzen of some description. But yeah, when this beer poured, it came with about a finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of cream coloured head. That faded away very, very quickly, actually, and it is just now a kind of thin foamy layer on top of the beer. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but it does look pretty nice. As you can see, this beer has a typical kind of caramel sort of colour to it, a kind of light amber, I guess we could say. Remember, the history of the Märzen style lager beer is quite interesting. So these beers were brewed in March, hence the term Märzen, but the reason that they became the Oktoberfest beer was that they were aged over the summer in the Kellers, because of course at this time in Germany you did not have artificial refrigeration and lagers need cold temperatures to be able to ferment. So they aged these beers basically, they fermented them until October, and they became the Oktoberfest beers. So yeah, basically a Märzen is a more kind of sort of biscuity, caramelly lager. The Czech equivalent of this is probably the Letzak, and you could potentially argue that the Vienna lager is not a million miles away from this as well, although I would argue that the flavour profiles are quite different. But regardless, yeah, a nice German amber lager, this one, and we once again have the nice artwork from Brauhaus Südstern on the front here. But yeah, lovely, nice kind of amber colour, this one. Let's have a wee look at the aroma and see what we get from this, the Fest beer. Yeah, this is pretty nice actually. Yeah, straight away with this beer you get a little bit more of a kind of brown bread, wholemeal sort of bready character out of it. The green component is quite soft and leans toward the grassy side of things. You've got some nice, slightly more oily fruits to it as well. And yeah, this is nice. Good bit of sweetness, good little bit of hoppy character and a little bit of fruitiness. Everything you would want, pardon me, from a Märzen or a Fest beer. Of course, you know, the Fest beer, if we call a Fest beer, is you can argue that a Fest beer is a different style from a Märzen, because a Märzen can be even stronger than 5.6% ABV, so that is something I should have said earlier too. But yeah, aroma-wise, this is nice. So backbone of this beer, absolutely a little bit of a more kind of brown wholemeal sort of bready bread crust to this one. On top of that, you definitely get a more kind of grainy, slightly rye bready character coming out of the beer. There's certainly some more wholemeal bread though, and also some white bread to this one. Good little bit of sweet caramel, some nice McVitie's digestive notes as well. Yeah, aroma-wise, I think this is pretty damn solid actually. There are 1 or 2 little woody notes to it, maybe a very slight nuttiness, but yeah, brown, you know, more wholemeal bread crust, a little bit of a kind of rye bready note for sure. Some wholemeal brown bread, some white bread, sweet caramel, and also a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit. Yeah, I do like how that, I really like how that goes together actually. The aroma is pretty nice, and the more that you smell of it, the more you get this kind of dry bread crusty note, and that, in fairness, that does remind me of the Vienna lagers a little bit, so I'm curious to see how much of that actually comes out in the flavour of this, this particular beer. So yeah, yeasty side of things, yeah, you get a little bit of kind of more airy bread out of this one. You get a little bit of that more kind of crackery sort of thing. But yeah, I like it. On the hoppy side of things, the interesting thing about this one is that it uses the Ariana hop from Hallertau. If I remember rightly, that's another slightly higher alpha acid one, maybe about 8% alpha acid actually, and that gives you a little bit of this kind of pineapple-y, papaya-y, apricot-y sort of note actually. I've not had it too many times, so it is in the back of my memory, but not overly familiar with it. But you can certainly get some really nice notes out of this. The smooth earthiness, once again, you've got a little touch of a herbal quality in this beer. I'm noticing that with these Südstern beers, is they do have the hops really give quite a bit of herbal quality. So that's obviously to do with the kind of malt, the mix, the specific kind of malt they're using, the yeast and the hops. You know, there's something going on with these beers, but you definitely notice that. I guess that since it's coming out in all of the beers, it's maybe to do with the house yeasts. But yeah, lovely little bit of smooth earthiness, good little bit of herbal character. There is a little touch of floralness to this one, but I would say the green component is more wet and grassy actually. But yeah, aroma-wise, the hoppy side of things is quite nice. Fruity side of the beer, yeah, again, you've got this kind of apricot-y base to it, a little bit of the kind of sultana notes. I get a little bit of a kind of more oily, datey character to this one. There is that little bit of pineapple, and definitely a big sort of oily, peary character in this beer as well. The fruity profile in all of these beers that we've tried so far has actually been pretty similar. So yeah, but the fruity notes in this, the kind of dryness that you get from the fruity characters and also the bready notes are quite nice. I do like this kind of dry fruitiness that a lot of these Südstern beers seem to have. But yeah, I think that is everything that we need to say about the aroma. This one, as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy it before you get stuck in. But yeah, this one is the Fest beer, 5.6% ABV. A kind of Märzen, amber, whatever you want to call it, lager beer. Slange, skål, cheers, prost. Ooh, that's nice. Again, it's quite a straightforward beer, this one. It is, you know, the Märzen, I think this, you know, when we talk about Fest beers and Märzens, as I said earlier, you can argue that these are different styles. The Fest beer, of course, is a very light, just drinkable beer with a wee bit more breadiness and stuff to it. And this beer definitely fits into that category. It's certainly not as kind of sweet and biscuity as I've had from Märzens in the past. So yeah, probably we do have to say this, it's called Fest beer, so it would make sense that it is more of a Fest beer if you can say that's a different style. But regardless of what it is, it's pretty solid, it is quite nice. So yeah, I like that, I do like this. Let's break it down and describe it that wee bit more. So, the backbone of the beer, you get a little bit of that, as I said, a kind of brown bready bread crust forming the backbone of this beer. On top of that, you do get a little bit more of this kind of slightly drier but slightly sweet brown rye bready character toward the front of that middle third of the palate. There's a little touch of woodiness to it. But then on top of that, you get a more wholemeal brown bread, and yeah, that I don't get so much white bread in the flavour. There is a little thin layer of that on top of everything, but yeah, wholemeal bread crust, rye bread, then a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character to the beer. Yeah, that's mainly what I get from this one, I have to say. Yeah. On top of that kind of very light white bready layer, you start to get some of the more kind of caramelly notes. In the dead centre of your palate, you do have a little bit of caramelly character to this one, and as you move further out from that, there's a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive, biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, I do like how that goes together for sure. More oily caramel, a bit more of a biscuity note, and then you've got that white bread in it as well. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else to say about the middle third of the palate in this beer. Let's focus on the back third of the palate then. So as you move into the back third of the palate, the bread crusty note gets a little bit stronger. You get a more, you can feel that the sort of rye bready base that this beer has is there too. You also get, you can feel that it's a little bit taller, and then you also get the kind of more wholemeal brown bready character on top of that. Then on top of that there's a more kind of yeasty character to the beer too. So you can definitely feel that the flavour on the back third of the palate is definitely taller than in the middle third of the palate, and again we've noticed that in all three of these beers. But yeah, I'm getting quite a bit of yeasty character out of this one, and we noticed that in the Hefeweizen, and in fairness, now that I think about it, the Helles was showing that too. But yeah, you have got this kind of grainy, bready backbone to it, and obviously that's to do with either the base malt that they're using or the house yeast, I would say. But I like this, I do like that. I think that's everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer. On the hoppy side of things, back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of smooth earthiness. As you come further forward, it's a little bit herbal. Then as you reach the front corners of the palate, a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic. Round the front curve of the palate, a little bit more grassy, and the grassiness actually does have a wee bit of zestiness in this, and that will be down to the Ariana hop, which, as I say, I think is a slightly higher alphas than the other ones we've had before. I think it's about 8%, that one, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, the green component in this has a little bit more floral character and a little bit more kind of zestiness from the grass. But yeah, let's look at the front third of the palate and the fruitiness of the beer. So yeah, front third of your palate, lovely little bit of smooth white bread, and then again the fruit flavours in this are quite similar. For me, it's actually, it has got a good little bit of kind of that sultana note, that dry white green grape. There is a good little bit of kind of apricot-y, dry pineapple-y note as you come further forward to it, and maybe just a little hint of an oily pear as you reach the front tip of the tongue. The fruit profile, the fruit flavour profile in the three beers we've tried so far has been very similar, but the next one, the Dunkel, probably will be a bit different. But yeah, you can certainly feel that nice dry fruity character to this one. Overall, it's quite a solid beer, this one. In terms of the difference between Fest beer and Märzen, this one is a bit more bready, whereas a Märzen would be a little bit sweeter and a little bit more biscuity. And this beer does show those flavours, but just not quite as much as you might expect. But yeah, it is quite nice. So, in terms of the mouthfeel then, mouthfeel wise, it's quite similar to what we've had before. So for me, top end, light bodied, it's a lager beer, carbonation is quite smooth. It does have an element of creaminess to it, this beer, which is quite interesting too. You get a bit of that Brauhaus smoothness. There's a good little bit of sweetness in the malt base. You've also got a little bit of dryness and graininess and breadiness, and then the hoppy character I think is a fairly standard sort of 20 IBUs, something like that, and the fruity notes are a little bit oily. But yeah, that's an interesting beer, this one. It shows a little bit of Märzen characteristic, but the breadiness makes me think it leans more toward a Fest beer. Not a style I get to try very often, but yeah, pretty glad that I got to try this one. We are in Germany in September, so we're starting to get the Fest beers. But yeah, let's leave it at that for beer taste number 3. We'll be back soon just with something else. Catch you guys in just a second. Alright guys, so we got a little bit hungry, so Isha wants to try some German food, so we're going for a kind of classic Vienna Schnitzel with pommes, and then we've also got a goulash as well, which should be quite interesting. So yeah, let's have a little taste of these and see what we think. Alright guys, so let's have a little look at this food then. So first off, we've got the goulash, so we'll try the meat and see what the meat's like. I'm wondering if this is Dunkelbier sauce. One of my favourite things in Germany, Dunkelbier sauce. You can't beat it. But the meat, really nice, very soft, very well cooked, and the sauce is beautiful. Actually, this is very, very nice. Yeah, quite different to the first encounters I had with goulash before. I mean, the first goulashes that I tried were in the Czech Republic, and yeah, you know, this one is quite different. I've never seen goulash quite presented like this. For me, normally goulash is more soup-like, whereas this is more like a kind of dish, almost. But yeah, we have this, and I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure what this is. It looks like a kind of bready, potatoey type thing. So I've dipped this in the sauce, you can see there. It does look a little bit like a kind of muffin consistency or something like that. Just look at this. The camera focus on that. Interesting. Yeah. It's sort of like a doughy, thick bready sort of thing. I'm not 100% sure what to make of this. I like it, but I don't know what it is. So it's just like a really thick, doughy, bready kind of thing. But it is really good. Red cabbage I'm not going to try because I don't like red cabbage. I know this. So we'll leave that alone just now. But then yeah, we'll come to the schnitzel. See that? So the fries first off, the pommes. On their own. Really nice, really nicely seasoned. Just a little bit. Just a little, I don't know if it's not curry powder. I'm not sure exactly what that is. But whatever it is.
Like peri-peri powder.
Like peri-peri powder, something like that. You can see there. If it will focus. Camera's not doing it, but yeah, it's got that little bit of that peri-peri. So put a little bit of it in the mayonnaise. And that works really well. The ketchup as well, very, very nice. Very often with schnitzel, they give you a little bit of lemon, and I will say straight away, I don't like this. For me, a schnitzel should be a little bit salty. I don't like putting the lemon seasoning on it. That's just me. You guys might disagree with that. You know, I'm Scottish. We are not the most culinarily enlightened people, can we say. Our diet is terrible. I mean, we fry Mars bars, for God's sake. Yeah, that's just how it goes. So let's have a little look at this schnitzel without any sauce first off, and we'll see what it's like. And I will point out as well, Isha has not tried schnitzel before, so curious to see what she thinks about it. But yeah, on its own, that's nice. Good, quite crispy coating. The meat's nice. It's got the meat has a nice kind of density to it, but it's just well cooked. Let's try a little bit with the mayonnaise and the ketchup actually, and we'll see what we get. Take this little bit. I always feel awkward like filming. The beer comes very naturally. Describing the beer comes naturally, but food not so much. Let's try it with the kind of mayonnaise first. See what it's like. There we go. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. One of my favourite things in Germany is, of course, you know, schnitzel with Dunkelbier sauce, and you can also get the Jäger schnitzel, which has this kind of mushroom sauce, which is very interesting. But with this mayonnaise, we just try a little bit of it on its own. It's actually a very kind of sweet mayo. It's got a little bit of garlic to it. But overall, very kind of creamy and sweet. Let's see what the schnitzel's like with the ketchup. That's interesting, but I have to admit, I think it works better with the kind of white sauce, the kind of mayonnaise sort of thing. But like I say, it's really nicely seasoned, this. The actual crust of the schnitzel has a little bit of a salty, peppery kind of thing going on with it, and I think that works. I've still got a little bit of the Dunkelbier left, and it complements it very well. So yeah, a bit of schnitzel, bit of Dunkelbier. For me, that's German heaven. Yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the food review. So hope you guys enjoyed something a little bit different. Catch you in a second. Did you like did you taste the schnitzel yet?
Oh no, I haven't.
No, you need to taste the schnitzel. But yeah,
this is all yours. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's very
fantastic.
Good. The food is good here.
So good.
I will say that about Südstern. Their food is very nice. So make sure you try that if you come here. Alright guys, well it's time for our fourth and final tasting then here at Brauhaus Südstern. So yeah, we're going to round off with one of my favourite traditional German beer styles. I don't get to review these on the channel all that often and I wish we could change that. But yeah, looking forward to this. So this particular beer is called the Dunkle Stern, so the dark star, I guess we could say. It comes in at 5.4% ABV, and as you might be able to guess from the name, this one is a German Dunkel Lager. So yeah, a German brown lager, I guess we could say. The Czech equivalent of this beer style would of course be a Czerny. So yeah, this is going to be good, I think. So when this beer poured, it had about a half finger. This one didn't have such a big head on it. It had about a half finger of a frothy, I would have said kind of fawn coloured head. This one a very, very light sort of beige, but you can see that this beer has a lovely dark mahogany sort of chestnut colour. So again, you can put that down to the type of malt and things that is used in this beer. So yeah, it looks very, very nice. These beers can be a little bit lighter and more kind of mahogany coloured as well, but yeah, this one is definitely leaning toward the kind of darker end of the spectrum, of course, within the Dunkels. You can see once again it has this lovely little bit of natural haze to it, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones just going up toward the bottom of the head there, and the head incidentally has kind of just come down a little bit to be a very thin foamy layer. But yeah, appearance wise, I don't think there's anything surprising about this one when you consider what style it is. So let's have a little look at the nose and see what we get from this. Oh yeah, that's nice. What I'll also say about this one is that I think, going by how the profiles of the other beers that we've had so far from Südstern has been, I think the house yeast or the malt base that they're using for these beers is going to be most suited to this one. So it is my favourite style, like I said, but I think just the flavour profile that they have with some of these beers is going to be more suitable for a Dunkel beer. So yeah, this one is pretty going to be pretty nice, I think. Yeah, so aroma wise then, backbone of this beer, you have a really nice kind of little bit of kind of slightly dry bread crust. You can smell that it's a nice sort of fresh, you can smell that it's a really nice kind of fresh, almost like rye bread crust. On top of that, you are getting a little bit of that sweet rye bread character as well. Yeah, there is a wee bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bread, but mainly it's a nice kind of sweet rye bread sort of character that's coming out of this one. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There are of course one or two little woody and nutty undertones to the beer. You always get that in Dunkels, but yeah, for me it's mainly a big kind of sweet rye bready character that you're getting out of this. Good little bit of brown sugar, of course, and you can. This beer, I wonder if it's had a slightly longer wort boil, because you can smell a little bit of that sort of leathery, caramelised brown sugar note to this one. And remember, the longer you boil the wort, the more your sugars are going to caramelise. It's going to give you a darker colour of beer as well, but you can definitely smell a bit of that leathery woodiness. It almost has a little touch of tobacco aroma to it as well, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, definitely some sweet caramel, a little bit of a toasty caramel, and also some kind of biscuity notes in there as well. So yeah, the way the aroma, the malty side of this beer goes together is very, very nice. I don't think we really need to say anything more about that, to be honest with you. So let's have a little look at the hoppy side of this one. Once again, it has a little bit of that smooth earthiness. There's a little bit of herbal character in there. There's not too much floral note in this one, and it is a little bit more sort of kind of grassy, I would say. The green component of this beer does lean a little bit more toward the grassy end of the spectrum. So yeah, it is a little bit more of a kind of grassy note that you get. That's quite wet and grassy for sure. So yeah, green component of this beer is more kind of wet and grassy, but you do get a little bit of earthiness and herbal character out of this. It doesn't say in on either the German menu or the English one what hop variety is used in this. It just says that there's Pilsner malt in it, and also just coloured malt, they're calling it. So yeah, but yeah, on the fruity side of things, for me, yeah, for me, the fruity side of things, you do get a little tiny touch of sharper raisiny note out of this one. There's a little bit of that more oily fig, a little bit of black currant, a little bit of a sharper blackberry. But yeah, the fruity notes for me are mainly kind of more curranty and oily. So I do like how that goes together for sure. Yeah, this beer gives you everything you would expect from a Dunkel lager beer. As I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of it, but we're going to get stuck into this now. Very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. So yeah, this one is the Untitled Stern, the Dark Star, 5.4% ABV, a German Dunkel lager beer. Slange, Skål, cheers, Prost, our last beer here at Brauhaus Südstern. Yeah. That's nice, that is good. This is kind of interesting because even this one, when I think about, I was thinking, you know, the flavour profile that we've had, and as I say, I'm not sure whether it's base malt or whether it's the house yeast. I'm getting similar things with this. This is a really grainy, quite dry German Dunkel actually, but and I do like it. But I'm just, that seems to be the sort of repeating theme, if you like, recurring theme. My English is terrible these days. It seems to be the recurring theme in these Südstern beers is they're a little bit more grainy. They have a little bit of this more kind of brown bready vibe to them, because even when I think about within the Dunkel category itself, this one is quite a grainy, dry type beer. So, but I like it. I do like this. Yeah, so let's break this one down then. So the backbone of this beer, absolutely, you get a little bit of that kind of roasty, toasty. There is a little bit of a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust to this. You really do get a little bit of dryness out of this. It's almost a little bit like a Czech Tmavy, you know, the Czech equivalent of the German Schwarzbier, black lager. You do get a little bit of that in here. The bread crusty notes in this one are quite dry, but then on top of that, you do get that nice, slightly sweet rye bready note out of this one, and toward the front of that middle third of the palate, you get a little bit of that woody, nutty kind of character, which I really quite like in this one. I think that suits the beer. But yeah, within the kind of brown, rye bready side of the beer, you do get a little bit of an almost kind of tobacco. The flavour is almost like how tobacco smells. I've never smoked in my life, and I never would, but you just get that little bit of kind of almost tobacco. The flavour that you get out of this beer almost just reminds me of the way tobacco smells. We've played around with tobacco a lot in the lab back when I was studying chemistry, and you do just get that vibe out of this one. So yeah, dry bread crust, German rye bread, a little bit of woody, nutty character towards the front of that middle third of the palate. Then you can feel the leathery brown sugars, particularly down the middle line of your tongue. Get the leathery ones, and as you go out toward the edge of that middle third of your palate, you do get a little hint of a biscuity note to this one, and there is maybe a little bit of a sweeter caramelly circle in the dead centre of your palate. But yeah, it's that brown rye bready note that really comes out with this one, absolutely. Yeah, that is very, very nice. Yeah, this beer is another one that kind of grows on me the more that I drink of it. But that's the middle third of your palate. On the back third of your palate, you can feel that graininess is a little bit stronger, absolutely. On top of that, you can feel the rye bready layer is taller but a little bit more airy, and on top of all of that, you get a little bit more of the kind of yeasty character coming out of the beer. So yeah, that works really, really nicely. And again, on the back third of your palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down a little bit and the flavour squashes together. Nicely done, Dunkel lager beer, this one. Yeah. So, on the, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Hoppy side of thing is kind of what you'd expect. The green component, back corners of your palate there's a little bit of earthiness. As you come further forward, it is quite herbal, and that herbal note pushes forward quite a little bit. As you reach the front corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of floral note, and then round the front curve of the tongue it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, definitely. But the grassy notes in this beer are actually quite wet. As I say, if I'm thinking about what hop is maybe going to be in this beer, I would suspect that it's maybe a little bit of Northern Brewer, because the fruity side of this one is, it just feels familiar. It kind of reminds me of Doppelbox a little bit. So yeah, let's focus on that front third of the palate then. The base of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of a kind of sweeter brown bready note in there. Then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, the fruity side of the beer for me with this one, it's quite similar to what we found in the Aroma. When you take the beer in, you get a little bit of that raisiny sharpness. Underneath that, there's a little bit of a kind of more dry, datey type quality to it. And then, yeah, a little bit of an oily fig. But the fruity nature of this beer is actually kind of dried fruit, so there's a lot of date in there, maybe a little bit prune. And then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's definitely more kind of black curranty, and there's just a little bit of blackberry. So the way that everything goes together in this beer on that fruity side of things is very nice actually. It's quite, I think with the fact that this is a more kind of grainy, bready Dunkel, I think having those slightly more dry fruity characters really works. But as I say, it gets a thumbs up from me. I think this is quite a nice Dunkel, and quite different to a number of the other ones that I've tried. I'd be very curious to go to Czech Republic and try some of the Chernies that you get on tap there and see what they're all about. But yeah, this is good. This is nice. I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour profile of this beer, to be honest. In terms of mouthfeel, for me, bottom end of mid-bodied. Yeah, bottom end of mid-bodied, top end of full-bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth in this one. It's quite a wet mouthfeel actually, which is interesting. A little bit of dryness in the aftertaste, as we said. IBU wise, I think this is kind of I think this is maybe about 20 IBUs. You do get a bit of dryness from the malt though, and toastiness, which probably adds to the impression. It maybe gives you the impression of a slightly higher IBU. But malt base, as we said, a little bit dry, a little bit sweet. The fruity side of this beer is a little bit wet and more kind of oily and things. But yeah, I think it goes together really nicely. So yeah, I think we can round off that there. So this was the Untitled Chapter, a 5.4% Dunkel beer, our last beer here at Brauhaus Südstern. So yeah, I will go outside, I'll let you know my final thoughts on Brauhaus Südstern in just a second. But yeah, we've had some quite interesting beers here, so see you very, very soon. Alright guys, well that is my time up then here at Brauhaus Südstern in Berlin. So yeah, I had a really nice couple of hours here. We got to try all 4 of the beers that they had on tap, which was great. One thing to note is that the Fest beer that we had was apparently only put on tap yesterday, so we got that one very, very fresh. So that's kind of interesting. It did turn out very nicely. The food I was quite impressed with as well. The Schnitzel and the Goulash were both very good. They worked out at about €12 per dish. So yeah, that's maybe about $13.50 American roughly, and I guess somewhere in the region of £11 sterling, maybe a little bit less. So in terms of food pricing and stuff, I thought it was pretty good. The beer was reasonably priced as well, and yeah, the only other thing I can think to say is that the guys inside were telling me this place opened, Brauhaus Südstern opened about 17 years ago, so that means it's about 2000 and what's it going to be about? Yeah, 2005 that they opened. So again, as we've seen in Berlin, it is quite a new company compared to what you'll find in the rest of Germany. But considering the history of the city, that pretty much makes sense. But yeah, the service here was really good. I enjoyed my time here. And yeah, I do recommend that you guys come and check it out. Trying beer in places like this that you're not going to get anywhere else is one of the really cool things about coming to Germany, and I guess you can say the same about Austria and the Czech Republic as well. So yeah, that is us done at Brauhaus Südstern here in Berlin. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Check out my social media. I'll put their social media in the video description for you below as well. And if you find yourself in Berlin, do come and visit. I'm off down to Huxley's Neuwert just now to see Blind Guardian play Somewhere Far Beyond. Looking forward to that. Catch you guys in the next Out and About video. I think that probably is us done with the ones in Berlin at the moment just now. So, see you guys very soon. Sláinte, skål, cheers, prost.